All right. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the second episode of VALR Unfiltered: Money, Meaning, and Society. And today I have the great pleasure to speak with Kevin Lee, Chief Business Officer at Gate.io. So welcome, Kevin.
Hey Ben, thanks for having me.
What floor are you on in terms of your view? Do you have a beautiful view?
I do. 27th floor. Yeah, it's
Okay.
in crypto is really special to have an actual office, physical office. So I'm blessed with the view.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's also for people to know. So Kevin, of course, is in Hong Kong at the moment, and yeah, if you're lucky and you have a nice office, then usually it comes with a very gorgeous view. So anyway, I'm very happy that we have the opportunity to speak, Kevin. Um, the way that I've set up these kind of podcasts is much less as an interview and much more as a discussion or at least an exploration, of sorts. And in this one, I really want to actually explore the subject of Hong Kong, which I know for you is maybe a subject that you often talk about, but for a lot of our audience is interesting. Part of the reason why I think it's interesting is that I view Hong Kong as one of the, if not the original crypto city and of global significance. And we can talk more about it. But of course, its positioning, so close to the mainland of China and all of the mining history in China, and also, Hong Kong as a financial hub. So I really hope that through a few key questions we can kind of come to a vision of what Hong
Yeah,
Kong
of
is all
course,
about.
of course.
Yeah, really wonderful. So maybe before we start, Kevin, you can just take some time to introduce yourself and let people
Sure,
know who
yeah.
you are.
Yeah. So before the compliance team kill me for what we just said, well, they probably will kill us like after, like later on for the later podcast anyway. But like just to make it very sure, I'm the chief business officer of Gates.io, but I'm also the CEO of Gates Hong Kong, which is a separate entity. We keep things arm's length. So this office is actually like a Gates Hong Kong office. Like Gates.io doesn't actually have an office in Hong Kong. So compliance team, I'm clear. But it's a very deceiving title. To be honest, I don't get my hands on to the actual business this day, thanks to a really amazing teams across different business units we have. What I do this day mainly is like we recognize there is a problem, is the disconnections a few years back, where like running an exchange is like relatively easy, right? Everything's automated, matching engine, you can just have the website and so be it. But like we feel like we need to connect with the community. I know it's a cliche, but like we need to show up. Basically, we can't just have like people hiding behind the scenes or even hiding behind NFT profile pictures. So that's why I'm here. You can see, like, if the audience like check me online, I use my real name. I have my real face. This is me. You can see my real face on all the social media. I'm everywhere. I'm reachable. I don't have a team to manage my social media, as Ben you would know already. I reply all the message by myself. So it's a kind of way that's like I'm in a position to show up, like this podcast, to talk to the community, but also more importantly to listen to the community, which is amazing. This is like no complaint. Any complaint that I have is like hashtag first world problem. So it's an amazing job to talk to a lot of people to understand their struggles, their stories as well. And here I am. So yeah, happy to chat more.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's a very good explanation. And often, structures like that are necessary in Hong Kong. And of course, now there's a lot more regulatory clarity, but before it wasn't like that. And I think it's a good starting point. You know, let's say very early days, and I know that's everywhere in the world, but especially in Hong Kong, crypto was a super underground endeavor, right? So it's like very kind of small meetups, not very flashy actually. Just small meetups, developers coming together, talking about hacking and then the dark web, and Bitcoin or some new version of Bitcoin. I think Craig Wright actually announced his Bitcoin Satoshi vision somewhere near North Point. Uh,
Yeah.
and also, if you think about it, all of the big exchanges, apart from like Coinbase and let's say Kraken, but all of the big exchanges, OKX, BitMEX, Binance, what else do you have? A lot-
FTX.
FTX, FTX. Okay, they've all had a presence in Hong Kong, at some point in
Yeah.
their lifetime, right? And
Yeah.
so and so that means that there's a lot of talent, a lot of people that are working in Hong Kong that have had some background. So that's part of it. And then there's another part, which is mining used to be huge in China, and a
Yeah.
lot of that flowed through Hong Kong. And so I want to talk with you a little bit about the early days. It can be either from your personal anecdote or just the way that you see it. But this is all kind of prior to 2022 when things started to pick up more in a
Of course.
mainstream, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I yeah, yeah, I started the career in crypto career like 4.5 years ago. I joined the first regulated exchange, crypto exchange in Hong Kong. And before that, I was always in banking, as you know. Like I've always been licensed with the SFC, the local regulators in Hong Kong. I'm not a crypto bro, right? I'm definitely not a degen. I may look like a degen these days, but back in the day, I mean, like this is what I want to do as well, as in like to see Hong Kong pivot into like a more like a regulated hub for crypto or digital asset. So I am not like early days. I didn't see like Vitalik in the random place in Hong Kong just doing a workshop with like 10 people. I'm not that early in the crypto space in Hong Kong, but I can talk about like in banks, right? So banks was interesting. So obviously all the bankers smell money, right? So they see the money is in crypto. They just like get into crypto pretty early, even like 2016, 17. I was still in banks, but like people was like really into crypto already. I bought my first bitcoins back in 2013, but that's a different story for maybe later. But it's really interesting transitions. It's like at the very beginning, as banks, you will have this like personal account policy, right? So your PA need to be managed. At the very beginning, there's no PA policy for crypto because to banks they're saying basically they don't recognize this as an asset. They're just like, well, do whatever you want. You don't have to report it. You don't have to. You just trade whatever the way you want. You can day trade it. You can leverage. They don't care because to them it's nothing. Then it changed. It changed like pretty much 180 degree. They don't know what to do. They know it's like regulations coming. They know it's like risky. It's like, no, you cannot touch anything crypto. That's how the rule changed. So your PA account cannot have any crypto. Obviously, they they would know, right? If you have your personal wallet, etc. But like the rule is you cannot touch any crypto, even crypto related product, not even a ETF back in the days. So it's you see this a change in a way that's stopping people from trading, but the mentality is actually maturing because they now recognize it's an asset, but a really risky asset, so they don't want the traders on the floor to keep trading it every day, right? Despite people still do it. And then now, obviously, these days, like even more mature, right? They will probably ask the licensed persons in the banks to, you have to trade with regulated entities, regulated platforms in Hong Kong, which we have more than a couple these days already. They would have your monthly statement, your transaction statement. They will connect to the HR teams or compliance team of the banks directly. So the whole thing is just like feeling free, more and more natural to me because like this is how I started. And yeah, this is like a very interesting perspective. Like the crypto bro or like the crypto industry may not know about Hong Kong because like banks, I'm sure banks in like other regions would have similar story as well. But like it's a really interesting aspect where we don't talk a lot because this is like quite separate to us back in the days.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and it's good to know also the way that you're coming into the space. Yes, I talked about these kind of underground meetings and stuff like that. But of course, in the banks, there were also developments going on. I do think it's interesting, however, still to kind of bring out that kind of core Hong Kong context. You know, the reason I think the reason why Hong Kong is of course so interesting is because it's been a financial hub for a long time. And I think in two ways we might be able to talk about that. You know, one is from a cultural perspective. So, you know, what I've noticed is, of course, there's not 100% adoption of crypto in Hong Kong. It's certainly people that have some money to spend, uh, you know, people that maybe like to invest and like to trade. But then when it comes to Hong Kong, it seems that people are very aware of, first of all, the stock market. You know, there's a strong
Yeah.
culture around the Hong Kong exchange, of course, and also property. So property is a
Yeah.
big thing in Hong Kong. So I figured, you know, maybe we can look at it from that perspective to say, okay, you know, how has this shaped the culture? How do people view investments and trading? You know, it might look as if it's all degen, but actually there's something behind it. And then on the other hand, there's still that you know the whole part of its relationship to China, and we can do that from a crypto perspective. But I think from your end, you could also explain a little bit to the audience that relationship from a kind of a macro financial perspective. Just like how does that work together? There's a lot of money in China, but
Yeah.
it doesn't easily move beyond China. And then Hong Kong, of course, has its very particular positioning. So maybe both property, stock market, and kind of Chinese finance vis-a-vis Hong Kong could be of interest.
Yeah, so it's a really big topic, and it's really interesting. Obviously, I was born and raised here. It's some of the things I just take it for granted, like it is always the ways. So for the audience who doesn't really know about like Hong Kong or like more like the Chinese or Asian culture, first of all, like we buy properties not just for living, we buy properties for like investment, which is really weird because like it's really high leverage for a really illiquid market. So and stock markets, as you mentioned, is like a lot of people is like really into trading in Hong Kong, trading like in the stock markets. But also in general, I think in Hong Kong, where the general, I wouldn't say struggle, but like the way that we view money, just like to bang onto your topics, is like first we really want to save money. We work to save money. We work to provide for the family. We have to provide for our parents, which apparently is not like it's not universal to like all the culture, right? But so like we already have our incomes, like we have to give away to our parents, we have to give away for our families, and we have to still save money, and we use the money to invest. So that mentality is like it's part of the culture in Hong Kong, which is amazing in a way, but like it's also kind of like skewed in a way. So like we look at money quite seriously because like this is what like we day to day we want to make more money. So properties is another things, but also very interesting because like again I just gone into the banking side of things because like bankers again they see money in everything. They will say, oh, if I buy this like golf club membership and then we rent it out, we can have 8% yield. They would discuss this. This is like, all right, this is like a innovative way of thinking a golf club membership, right? Or like I think it's like back maybe must be like 15 years ago when the copper price like really high. They would just look at Wikipedia to check if the coins the currency coins how much copper is actually in it, and if it's like a 10 cents, if we melt it, do we actually justify to extract the copper out and then sell it and make a profit? So like they always have this mindset where like there is money everywhere. So I guess crypto in a sense it makes sense for Hong Kong, not only because of the financial system, which we talk about it in every single panels and podcasts anyway, but I think culturally this is where we see the opportunity, and we always want to seize it. If that makes sense to you, yeah. So that's Hong Kong. China would be very interesting. I cannot like very specifically comment about like the China policy about the cryptocurrency, etc., the regulations, but I would phrase it in a way that it becomes a questions, maybe rhetorical. But it's a questions, right? So I'm not commenting. Compliance, if you're watching this, I'm not commenting. So would the audience right now is like genuinely believe that there are no mining business in China right now? As
Yes.
questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Are they trading activities in China right now? Probably, probably not. They
Who
just
knows?
who knows, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I think okay, if you have a project and if you want to launch a cons, that's a big no, right? You got raid, you got like Chinese police just like raid to your place and shut everything down, probably. But I think in a way the question is like mining and trading is probably still an open secret in China. But let's go a little bit deeper, which I can comment is China is still like a really is Chinese RMB is a restricted currency, as we know, and one of the major policy, overall macro policy of China in the last 30-40 years is capital control. They don't want capital outflow, right? Makes sense. Back in days, they don't even want like capital inflows, but that's different now. And there are ways, officially or unofficially, money can go out of China, right? And in a lot of ways, if people not aware already, Hong Kong is kind of like the controlled gateway in the traditional financial system, where people can get some of the money out in a regulated way. Yeah. So I guess again this makes a lot of sense because question form, would crypto be a way for people in China to move capital out of the country? Probably. I don't know. It's remain the questions. But if I am the Chinese government or the Beijing government, wouldn't that make sense to have Hong Kong as a regulated place for crypto exchange to have a presence here, so that if there's any capital inflow outflow, they can do it in a controlled way. Yeah, we have like what, like 7 million, 8 million people here. Relatively, it's just like a small second tier city. You don't have to control the whole China. If you have like regulated exchange all over the place in China, that's going to be really hard, really difficult for the government to control, right? If we do it in Hong Kong, and then you have 10 15 regulated exchange where you can make sure they do it in the right way with all the right KYC. They cannot be onshore money, they have to be offshore money. I think we have seen that model already in traditional financial systems. So again, this makes a lot of sense for crypto exchange to be in Hong Kong regulated. And it's go a little bit deeper because like this is basically the policy China has been running for the last 40 years.
That's actually very interesting. The way that I had read the kind of growth of Web3 and this whole pivot to start regulating exchanges was more about inflow for China. That's the way I had read it
Yeah,
so far.
of course. Yeah. Inflow and
Much
outflow.
more,
But
yeah, and
yeah, but
outflow. But I hadn't actually considered. I hadn't considered yet that outflow would also be like would be that this would be a way to try and kind of not stop the outflow, but rather regulate the outflow. I think that's very
yeah,
interesting.
at a gateway. So think about Macau, right? No casino in China, a lot of casino in Macau. You control everything
Yes.
in Macau. Your Chinese tourists going to Macau to gamble anyway. You know exactly the numbers, and you don't have to like concern about like casino all over the place in China, and you have like all this problem with the society, right? So you have a control. I'm not saying there's no problem in Macau, but like in a very controlled way, so they can make the policy more efficient and effective. I think
Yeah.
that makes sense for Macau for gambling, for casino, makes sense for Hong Kong for crypto and crypto exchange.
Yeah, and for banking. So that's
And for banking, yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's a very interesting thing because the way in terms of inflow, the way that I'd seen it so far and read it is kind of like every country wants to not just like restrict, well, not every country, but let's say a country like China wants to restrict the outflow of its fiat reserves, but at the same time it wants to also have some
Of course.
income come into the country.
Of course.
And if you want to put it in a ridiculous way, okay, so this is the ridiculous way, but then I'm also a little bit more skeptical of things like NFTs. But it's almost like, okay, here's a city. Let's sell pictures of monkeys. I give you a picture of a monkey. You give me some money, and that goes back into my country. I'm happy. This is
Yeah,
the kind of almost ridiculed way of looking at Web3. Of course, it's not all that useless. Um, but I kind of see, if a government doesn't take NFTs very serious, well, they're very happy for pictures of monkeys to be sold as long as they get the money back in the country. But the
yeah,
outflow part is, of course, also logical, which is, okay, there is money in China. It does want to go out, and it's always gone through Hong Kong. And
yeah,
that's a very legitimate way, whether it's through property or the banking system. And it's either you accept crypto or you don't. So, okay, in this case, crypto is happening. Cool. Let's have some regulated exchanges so we know what's happening at least. I think that makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
yeah,
Yeah. So, this is cool. For me, it's always fascinating to think about Hong Kong. And part of that is historical. For people who haven't been, Hong Kong is a very amazing city. It's incredibly intense, super busy, a lot of high rises. Um, but I haven't been there in a few weeks, and even when I'm there, I live a very private, secluded life. So, actually, speaking to you now, Kevin, it's reminding me um, how focused Hong Kong culture is on money.
yeah,
Just speaking to you, I just realize again, like, yeah, that's true. Especially when I used to work in Hong Kong actively, the conversation about money is always there. And part of it
yeah,
is, of course, it comes from a good place. It's like, look, I have to take care of my family, but also everything is expensive. Rent is very expensive. Buying a house generally is expensive. Life is expensive, right?
yeah,
And in Hong Kong, if you fall behind, then you really fall behind. Like it is also
yeah.
possible to just not be able to keep up, and you end up in a bad place.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's very interesting. And when you take that and kind of translate that to crypto, it makes sense because there was a time in Hong Kong when I think this must be maybe 2022. I think so. And I remember just any restaurant, if I would have dinner, I could hear the next table and they're talking about NFTs. And I don't think there's any place like it. Like it was so ubiquitous. It was just everywhere. There were conversations about these NFTs, or Solana would come up in a conversation. And I really thought to myself, like, it's really, really going mainstream now, this stuff, like this is interesting. And that same money conversation was now about NFTs and Solana, like another
yeah,
IPO stock or something like that. Um,
yeah. I
so
guess we have been a few cycles of this already, right? So whenever like it has to be like just 6 months ago, and then 2021, maybe 2018, 17 as well. Like every cycle, you will have your colleagues or like or friends or families, relatives come to you. Oh wait, what is this Bitcoin thing? Like where
mm,
can I buy it? Yeah, it's
yeah,
always happened in Hong Kong, and it
yes.
happened to like pretty much like almost everyone that I know would come across that conversation at some point of time in the last few years.
Yeah, that is very fascinating. I think, what I'm missing a little bit sometimes in Hong Kong, and I wonder if you agree with it or not, but maybe it's because of this, maybe it's this kind of money focused approach, which has its roots in the stock markets and in buying property. What I'm missing a little bit is the ideological element. So, like for me personally, like Bitcoin is also very much an ideology, and
Yep,
um, and I think in Hong Kong itself, apart from some very big holders, there's much less interest in Bitcoin as such, but much more in the new stuff, the shiny stuff. For a while,
yep,
that was Ethereum. I think that's dying out, but let's say,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
say
Now it's
Solana.
AI. Yeah,
Yeah, now it's AI, exactly as expected. Or when FTX was there, like it was like FTX was hot. Everybody was talking about FTX. All the exchanges were learning from FTX. Uh, and it's not like these exchanges operate in isolation. Like many of them would, the like kind of leadership would meet in the evenings and play poker together. And these are like competitors. So I think that's and poker is another thing, very big in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So, but so what I'm actually saying is all of that makes sense for Hong Kong. But personally, what I've missed is a kind of ideological element to that. So first, I'm curious as to your thinking. Do you think that's correct? Is it just about making money and it doesn't really matter what it is, or is there some vision? And I'll explain later why I'm asking that.
Yeah, I mean, like I think you're right, 100%, and we have to admit that this is the problem for Hong Kong. Um, as you said, like even it go further than just like stock, properties, investment, poker. Like think about like these days, like okay. Also forget about AI. AI was like I know this like your whole series is called like Unfiltered, so like I probably would go Unfiltered. The last policy address from the government, they just like have like almost no mention of Web3. Web3 as a phase. If you just like Control F, you don't see it anymore. I think you have 200 words, 260 something words like on the crypto industry in general, and it's like about stablecoin, which is like quite boring, honestly. Everything's about AI. So like even the government doesn't really have like a consistent like vision about like a single industry across a few years. They just move on from one thing to another thing because of, as you mentioned, it's in Hong Kong. It's like in our bone to actually chase the next thing. The other example is like in Hong Kong, we talk a lot about like RWA, which I think by itself is a really great applications. So, and I'm gonna say it, and it would make me feel like even more like a person from Hong Kong. So, luxury watches,
So,
vintage
yeah.
wine, or like whiskey,
Mm.
or even like painting, right? So we have like the two big auction house in Hong Kong, like Christie and Sotheby's in Hong Kong. They even do NFTs auctions back in the days, but like in general. So I don't know if the audience know. In crypto exchange, they probably know crypto exchange. We charge commission for like 5 basis point, so 0.05%. Properties 1% in Hong Kong. I think it's more or less the same across a lot of places. Whiskey and watches. Do you know? Are
No, I
you,
wouldn't
are
know.
you
I don't buy
30 to
whiskey.
40% commission because the market is so like it's so cornered, and you go through a broker instead of like an open exchange, right? Artwork, paintings, worse. Like it go up to like 80 to 100% commission.
Mm.
100% commission. We definitely in the wrong business. Like, that's coming from my friend. That's work in the auction house. But then it makes sense to have RWA where in crypto as a business use case it provide more like a transparent and open venue for this asset to change hands, right? So you lower the commissions, it become more efficient. But then a lot of talks about RWA in Hong Kong. No one actually talk about the actual whiskey or the painting.
Mm.
They don't know.
Mm.
They don't know the artwork. They don't know about Monet. They don't know about Manet. They don't know about like what they know. Hibiki is at this price. Hibiki Japanese whiskey is the hot thing now. Is cost this much. They know the cost. They know the price. They don't know about what's the difference between the whiskey in Scotland and Japan.
Mm.
So I think that's again this is a prime example of like how Hong Kong people operate these days. They know the price, they don't know the values.
This is very interesting. Yeah, for me at least. I don't know if it's interesting to other people, but for me it's very interesting. It's kind of confirmation, and it explains a little bit why I've always felt this in Hong Kong. Always, because
Yeah,
for some reason I come into the space. It's not so much with ideology. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm always looking for meaning. Like money is
yeah,
good, money is important, but it doesn't actually occupy my mind at all times. You know what I mean? I'm not a portfolio guy. I don't have this approach to life. But I understand in Hong Kong. I guess I learned it in Hong Kong. There is this portfolio approach, and it's
yeah.
always looking at kind of yeah, you have to hold yourself together and you have a portfolio. And what's in that portfolio might be crypto, it might be whiskey, it might be art, it might be a
Exactly. Yeah.
property. And maybe also, to be more generous to the Hong Kong people, whom I have great love for, by the way. But of course, Hong Kong, I think it's a city that where people survived.
Yep.
They came from a certain, like, of course, well, back in the day when Hong Kong was still empty, almost everybody came from China. Um, but it became a city where people had to survive, and then it became very rich. And I think somewhere in between survival and extreme wealth, there's
Yeah.
so many billionaires in Hong Kong, it's ridiculous. Okay, so a culture was born that is, I mean, it's quite unique, actually, I would say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're at a place that's so tiny and no natural resources, no any like advantage of any kinds, but we always come back stronger. Like we used to be the biggest like toys exports city. Then it's like clothing, like textile productions and export. And then shipment we used to have the busiest port, and then it's like the traditional finance with the most like IPOs like values over a couple of years. But we keep changing, right? We never always been like the financial hub, the financial city. As you said, it used to be like a fish village back 140 years ago. We just keep changing, we keep pivoting. So it's just like nowadays we don't know like if there's a right or wrong, like where we should pivot to. The government thinks it may be panda, so we should go for pandanomics.
Mm,
I'm biased because I'm in this industry. I think crypto should work out. Some other people would think maybe it's something else. Maybe it's AI. Maybe they're right. So I guess we're just like in this like crossroad in Hong Kong where the always not quite working right now, or like tourism is really bad these days.
mm.
But what's next, right? We don't necessarily have the guidance. It's just like as you said, it's like more like a survival process where like some people can make it to the next phase and some can't.
Yeah.
But this is always the way of Hong Kong.
Yeah, I do know. And of course, like I was there, especially during COVID, and during COVID, I couldn't leave. Nobody could leave, actually. Well, if you
Yeah,
left, you can't come back.
yeah,
Um, but it wasn't really like Hong Kong was in a very strong position financially, I mean. And I remember like the reserves at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, like the reserves would just be there. It's not like
yeah,
Hong Kong went about money printing because its value is pegged to the Hong Kong dollar's value is pegged to the US dollar, of course. So
yep,
it wasn't really about like, oh, let's print some money, and like it was more just about, we have massive reserves. And so I think Hong Kong is in a pretty strong position always, actually. Yeah, kind of as a default, it's just in a strong position. But that doesn't mean that life, can't get harder for the people living in that city,
yep,
right? And in that
yep,
ecosystem. And that's maybe reflected in tourism because it is really expensive these days, actually. Just
yep,
daily life has gotten quite expensive. So that's always, yeah, that's, and I think that globally, of course, of course that's globally. But let's say for a money sensitive people, um, I don't think they're going to be very happy when they see prices go up, unless it's in
of
your
course.
portfolio, of course.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's like and people whoever I'm very biased. For whoever people say like Hong Kong has been worse is the a shadow of the former self. Like but like name me one city in the world in the last 8 years like not been worse. Like pretty much like every city in the world has been worse, which is like really sad thing to say.
Yes.
Um, but but in a way, like relatively speaking, Hong Kong is still like a really good place. Um, I just come back from Dubai, took in obviously. Dubai is great, but like I complain about the Hong Kong weather. It's like 8 months in a year. But like in Dubai, I probably not gonna complain because I wouldn't be able to survive there with their weather, right? So I came back.
Mm.
It's humid, but sure, I'll take the humid instead of the heat. So I think a lot of people like in Hong Kong never actually values those like being very fortunate. We have no natural disaster whatsoever. Thanks to the Philippines, they block all the typhoons already. No
Yes.
earthquakes. Like
Yes.
even just like next door, like our neighbor, like Taiwan or Japan, they will be have like a lot of like potential earthquakes happening. So yeah, it's no complaining. It's still a very great city, despite of the problem that we have right now.
True. Now, let me give a bit of a picture to people especially in South Africa. So Hong Kong, of course, has typhoons, and you're right. It's not very disastrous. Of course, the accidents can happen. Many trees
Yeah, of
fall
course, yeah,
down. Um, the buildings, when you're up high, for example, on the 27th floor, like you shake. Uh,
yeah,
but you trust you trust the infrastructure. But what I found very surprising is you go outside the next day, it's a total mess. Like the streets are full of rubble. And then about
yep.
2 days later, it's clean. Like
It's
literally, even
clean.
the trees that were all like uprooted, everything is clean, gone, either replanted or I don't know how. I don't know how the city does it. But that's really amazed me always. And
Yep.
I like typhoons. Like I like coming outside right after the typhoon, and I have to run away for these boxes that are still kind of flying through the streets, and I don't know, rubble chasing you around the corner. It's quite fascinating, actually. Uh,
Yeah.
and in terms of an earthquake, actually, I was in Hong Kong once, and I did feel an earthquake,
Oh
and
wow,
I was
yeah.
like, yeah, and it was like, and I saw my television move and the lamp move, and I was like, oh, but that was it. It was done. I checked on
Yeah.
Google, and immediately there were like 10,000 reports of an earthquake. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
fast. So I guess that's a fluke. Like it wasn't really a serious
Of
thing.
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, nothing like what we saw in Thailand recently.
No,
Um,
yeah. Were you in
that's
Thailand at that time?
no, no, no. I was not in
No,
Thailand.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
By we, I mean we people online.
We people, of
Yeah,
course, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But what
Um,
do you feel like? You've been in Hong Kong for a while, right? You live in Hong Kong for how long again?
maybe 8 or 9 years. It's
Right.
somewhere there.
W- would Hong Kong be your top three or even the top city to stay if you have a choice to choose anywhere in the world?
Yes, I mean I have a choice. But I now but like now I kind of live in between Hong Kong and Vietnam mostly.
Yep.
And then of
Yep.
course for work you travel around, but that doesn't count. Um, Part of that is because I find it really frustrating that things are really expensive day to day, including
Yep. Yep.
including whether it's rent or groceries or just moving from one place to another, unless you take like the MTR. I find that very frustrating. I'd rather spend that type of money differently.
Yep.
For example, doing community work, or like I feel like you can make a big difference in society. Um, and in Hong Kong, I feel very restricted in that way. But
Yep.
I tell you that I come back to Hong Kong every month, and I really love that city. It's and
Yeah.
I would regard it my home as well,
Yep.
more than any other place in the world. So it's my number one place in terms of just
Oh,
the
nice.
feeling of home. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, however, well, not really. However, what was I going to say? Um, yeah. So anyway, it's my number one place in terms of feeling at home.
Yep.
However, I do also really love to be in Vietnam, and I
Yep.
think what I love in Vietnam especially is really strong community feeling,
Yep.
and I like driving around on a bike and heading
Oh,
into the
and
city. The feeling of
you
freedom like
you
that.
got used you got used to the flow, right? So it's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
not like
yeah.
it's a chaos, but there's actually rules about how you can maneuver.
Absolutely, it's like a river. Like when so for people who don't know Vietnam well, like this is not like 10 bikes on the road. This is like thousands of bikes.
Thousands of bikes, yeah.
And and they don't stop at an intersection, just kind of they flow together and move
Slowly,
on.
yes.
And I think the only and there's two rules that I always stick to. One is kind of don't harm anybody. So it's like you can drive wherever you like, just don't bump into people. And I know it sounds simple, but if everybody does it, then actually you make it. And secondly, expect the unexpected at all times. So you should expect
Right.
that a child would suddenly come running onto the road, and a dog, and
Oh my
or that
God.
somebody
Yeah.
drives on the, right? You have to expect everything, and you cannot have a single moment where you don't pay attention, because I've had an accident. I don't think you can see my scar, but
Oh no.
I
Yes.
was
Now I can see it.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I was stitched up, 10 stitches in my face because somebody bumped into me from the wrong side on the at a roundabout. And this was on an empty road. And I don't know, I lost consciousness along the way, but as soon as I woke up, the lady was gone because I think she didn't want to get into trouble. So I was just left there. But that's nothing about the people. That's just the fear of repercussions. And I
Yeah.
think it was, bless her. So that's okay.
Yeah, no, but like, yeah, I think it's because of work. I've been traveling to Vietnam and in a way Thailand as well, like more often in the last 2 years. It's great. It's a great feeling about like it feel like the vibe is where the energy is where like Hong Kong may used to be like 20 years ago. Forget about like
Yes.
all the infrastructure and everything. So like the people that you mean, I always say like in Vietnam, half of the population is younger than 25 years old. Sorry,
Correct. Yeah.
35 years old. So yeah, it's a really young nation with a lot of people who's like really into like all these new things, may it be gaming or programming or like the crypto in general. So it's amazing. Is yeah, I like to come back more often, and I catch up with
Yeah,
you.
really. Yeah, of course, I love it. I love it. But that's really true. There's a young population, and in Hong Kong, that's actually very different. There's an old population as well,
Yep, yep,
which is much more similar to, let's say, Japan, Korea, maybe not as extreme,
yep,
but and that. So actually, this is good. It brings me a little bit to where I wanted to head anyway with this conversation.
yep. Sure.
Um, So, we've spoken now about Hong Kong as a financial hub, both in a crypto sense and not in a crypto sense, just from a banking perspective. Um, and it's always very fascinating. Hong Kong has for many, many years been number one in terms of the freest economy, of course,
Yep,
um, and actually has much more freedom than people might associate with Hong Kong slash China. Actually, there's a lot of freedom. I also would want to add to, for people's kind of picture of Hong Kong, it's very safe. So even me coming from Holland, there are places where I don't like to go at night, especially, and there are, parks where I don't
yep,
really like walking, and, youth congregate sometimes, and then you can get a feeling of like discomfort. In Hong Kong, there's no such thing. You can go into an alleyway, you might see a rat, but you can
yep.
literally go into any alleyway at 3 a.m. and, I don't know, feel perfectly safe. There's just no risk like that in Hong Kong. And I think that's really fascinating and
Yep.
something that people in Hong Kong take for granted. Because you don't
Yep.
feel that way in London, or,
No. Yeah.
in like, name any place, like New York, like these are not the safe places of the world, even New Delhi, like it's literally just, it's very Asia, it's very Hong Kong, Japan, Korea type of safety, which should not be taken for granted, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'll just give you. Is it a story? I don't know. It's just like I'll just say it. I'll just say it. So like in I have a lot of Australian friends, and obviously when Aussies got drunk at back in Oz, back down under, like, oh, it's become a really big thing, right? The cops will come in, intercept, just like make sure everyone's like, all right, step away, no fighting, no, just be calm, right? And Hong Kong, cops don't care. The
Mm.
reasons being is like in Hong Kong's like we in a way that's like we drunk, we just get into like these arguments, and no, like really seldomly we get into a fight. Maybe we're fighting and we're all like really skinny and we can't just like, hurt a fly. We can't hurt anyone. So like the cop was just like, all right, I'll just let you guys deal with it. So like you will see like people are just like, still it's like a little bit uncivilized, but in a way that's still very polite versus like
Mhm.
not particularly to Australians, but like to a lot of different countries, right? We don't go really, really physical. We may go really verbal. By the way, I think like in Cantonese, swearing is the best language. It's the most creative language in regard of like swearing. But like that's it. Like you point at each other, you kind of like keep like walking away to like different direction, but you still like swearing with each other. But that's make it great. Like I mean, if you go out and you see people drunk, you don't even feel like you in any danger because like the way
Correct.
that we behave. Maybe it's like a little bit of like a British heritage as well. It's like we just like go really passive aggressive. I don't know where it's from, but like this is part of the culture now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very true. Yeah, there's no feeling of threat even when people are kind of drunk or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So this is very true. Now, I think the reason I kind of distracted, we got distracted.
Yeah, yeah, we
Um,
both did.
but the reason that I brought all of this up, and again, let me just reiterate to the audience. So, we've brought up Hong Kong as a specially positioned city, in the kind of on the edge of China, where there's a huge economy, where Bitcoin mining has many years of history. Hong Kong has always kind of served as a gateway for a lot of the money from China to flow into the world and trade to take place, and the other way around as well, for money to come back into China. And so we can understand that crypto, of course, has kind of developed around that I guess financial ecosystem. And then, of course, we look at Hong Kong culture. We know that it's a population that's built with a survival, with a drive for survival. This population is very familiar with the stock markets and with property markets, and it goes so far as that life is almost like a portfolio, and that everything is almost commodified in that life, right? So from whiskey to wine to paintings to carpets to properties and even golf memberships. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. But then my critical note has always been that what I'm missing is kind of the optimistic um, vision, not for Hong Kong as a city. Hong Kong as a city is fine, but as a kind of driver of human civilization. And so what I hope for, I'll tell you what my hope is, and I don't know if it's realistic for Hong Kong. My hope was always, okay, cool. Hong Kong is going to be open to crypto, specifically Bitcoin. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority is going to build its Bitcoin reserves because it has way too much cash. So why not build up some reserves, be ahead of the US? Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. Um, but also realize that as you adopt cryptocurrency, don't come with your central bank digital currencies and these types of initiatives,
Yeah.
because that's hopefully not the future. Um, if you're going to adopt cryptocurrency and especially Bitcoin, but let's say even the stablecoin ecosystem, it means that financial flows are going to be somewhat liberated, right? And we don't want to move to a world that is travel rule first and central bank digital currency first, and basically another whole, you know, system weighed down by compliance, let's say. That is not my hope. My hope would be that Hong Kong adopts it in a way that El Salvador adopts Bitcoin. This is
Yeah.
my hope, which is of course on the other end of the spectrum. Like El Salvador is very ideological about it and very driven in like we want to drive our own future. So we've made Bitcoin legal tender. We accept that people can now send each other money back and forth, like, and we can't control it. I don't really know if that's going to happen in Hong Kong. But I think this all leads to a question, which is if we look at Hong Kong's future. So I know there's lots of trends and we go from here to there and AI and this and that. But still, uh, in a financial sense, like Hong Kong has a long history of finance and will probably have a long future of finance. Where do you see really the future of finance headed? And where do you see Hong Kong fit there? Is it going to be more on the restrictive side, or will there be room for real innovation? Like, how do you see this?
Okay, so really we have to really unfold it in a couple of ways. So first of all, I think Hong Kong, in a very optimistic way, Hong Kong may not want to be the number one of anything. They don't want to be the first, but they are not scared of being the second. So
Mm,
like for example, the ETFs, Bitcoins and Ethereum ETFs. I do with my limited understanding back in that was 2 years ago. We were ready, but we were waiting for the US to go first. Then we become the immediate second. So all right, you have that approved. We just do it right after you. We actually do Ethereum before the US as well, if I remember correctly. And now they allow
Correct.
ETF with staking ability as well. So we have the knowledge and the talents and the technology and the ecosystem infrastructure, everything to get ready. But in terms of our we are just a city somewhere in Asia, right? So we may not have that forward looking vision, we want to be the first of doing this. So that's one thing. But we don't mind being the second, which is we say a lot, right? With 140 different countries in the world, we become the second, which is really great. We were not a city, by the way. Compliance with a city, we're not a country. But the other thing is going back to the previous conversation about China and Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong is the best place for any kind of experiments for China to have a really limited and a controlled way to do it. Now, and again, put it as a question mark, would China not acknowledge that crypto or Bitcoins or Bitcoin mining would be a huge power, soft power, political power, so to speak, right? They kind of stop mining, but wouldn't that make sense to come back in a way that they may have state-controlled company to resume mining, but stop the capital outflow, but regain that power? They used to be the powerhouse for mining, right? Which is I would say we will see something like that happen. Or also
I think
I
so
know
too.
you mentioned about travel rules, then you don't want to go that way. But think about SWIFT, right? Travel rule is pretty much the SWIFT in crypto space, and SWIFT become a big topic where the US may stop Russia or China to use SWIFT in certain circumstances. Wouldn't that make sense to start working on the travel rules in crypto where you have certain control in that regard, so that you retain that kind of political power? So I think if someone like me, who is just someone in a one exchange in Hong Kong, would think about that, I'm sure a lot of higher up peoples in the Hong Kong government and the Beijing government would have known about this already, and they would find a chance to work on it. So I think that's my not fully optimistic thinking. Is still it's still more institutionalized version of what we want to see in the crypto space, but still it's development that we'll see in Hong Kong. Now, at the very last, where what kind of ideology that's we might actually do in Hong Kong, I think that's a lot. I think that's I think GitHub actually released a report saying in Hong Kong there are the most committed change in all the AI projects on GitHub out of anywhere in the world. So that means something. We don't lack talents. We do have the talents. We don't necessarily need the government support on a lot of things. We can turn it around quite quickly when we want to do things. And it just need one or two smart people. It's oh my God, it's Arthur Hayes. He just a traders in Deutsche Bank, right? Back in the days, we all know him not because of crypto, because he's just another bankers. And he's not only starting founding an exchange, etc. It's a new financial products like potential swap is a new product, right? So it doesn't take a lot of technology to actually build it, but like it's like a whole new idea of like having this and make it work in crypto is amazing. But by the end, I always said I'm not the smart guys in the room. If anyone's in Hong Kong's come up with a new idea, and then I would immediately say for sure that, damn it, I would have thought about that and I would have done it. But I'm not that guy. But I would be pretty optimistic that that would be idea, terms, concept that we haven't seen to date in crypto or like blockchain applications, business applications that would happen in Hong Kong and would blow everyone's mind. That's my optimistic scenario.
No, I think it's good. Like I think the main thing is that in Hong Kong there's a lot of room for innovation. I think that's what you're alluding to, and people do
Yeah,
innovate because it's correct.
yeah,
BitMEX was based in Hong Kong, and Arthur Hayes was very brave and developed perpetuals. But there's more like that. There's more things that, DeFi also picked up in a big way in Hong Kong before it picked up
yep,
elsewhere, and NFTs picked up in a big way in Hong Kong
yep.
before it really picked up anywhere else. And Web3, the whole term actually came out in Hong Kong in a strong way. Um, so I think that's a good point actually. And all these exchanges, like there's a reason why they all came to Hong Kong, including FTX. Um,
Yeah,
it's a place where you can experiment and you can actually, build out some new infrastructure and see what happens. So I think that's very true, and that's very optimistic actually about Hong Kong. Um, yeah, for sure. What do you expect? Since you're saying it might not always be the first, it might be the second. Do you think that if the US actually starts building out that Bitcoin reserve, do you think we'll see something from the HKMA?
I mean that's a non-zero chance that they will do it. Like I mean, like if you ask me if there's more chance the Chinese government would do it versus the Hong Kong government would do it, I would say the chance will be in the Hong Kong government. Again, for follow the
Mm.
similar logic where it's easier to control in Hong Kong. When things doesn't work right, it's just Hong Kong, right? It's just another city. If it's like China is become like more complex. So if the US trying to do it, I would say it's the chance to see it in Hong Kong is like much higher than in China at the very beginning at least. But yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of developments that I've heard, and I cannot speak publicly in like different organizations in Hong Kong, government organization, half government organization, private organization in Hong Kong, that build towards like new products and new ideas in Hong Kong. Um, a lot of them we probably not gonna hear about them because they're just like not come to fruition, right? But the some
Yes.
of them, if they do, I think it's quite exciting for the city to see all these new things happen in such a tiny city.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's appetite. I even remember a few years ago, maybe it was before the trading ban in China. I think it was Meitu,
Yeah,
who they
me too.
actually
But yeah,
they
as
had
a
a
treasury
Bitcoin and
reserve.
Ethereum reserve, right? Yeah, 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 they had
Yep,
it.
yep. They did.
So
Yeah, me
it's not
too.
like companies in China don't know, and many entrepreneurs in China hold crypto anyway. Like we know that
Yeah.
they just have hold some USDT and whatever it is. I mean that's pretty common. So I think okay, very cool, Kevin. We've done really well. We've covered an hour. And what I really hope is that people who've been watching this video, the previous podcast was about South Africa, it was about the townships and kind of what Bitcoin adoption looks like in the townships. So I really invite people to have a look at that episode as well. But this one is very different because, now we're discussing Hong Kong, which is a super developed city and very innovative, and it's always been at the heart of crypto, at least for more than 10 years actually, um, and very quickly evolving as well. So I hope for people it's been interesting, and it's really a pleasure to speak with you, Kevin. I hope you enjoyed it
Wow.
as well.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, Ben.
Okay, no problem. So everybody, goodbye and see you on the next episode.